we will go. So I'd like to just put our minds in the right place for tonight. Thank you so much for coming. And just to do some preliminary prayers is to first think about where would we go to seek protection from more suffering. So contemplating refuge, and not that we've all taken refuge in Buddhism, that's fine, but just thinking about what will be a support for me. And we like to think of the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I mentioned the other night. We see them as an infallible source of protection in knowing their qualities. Somebody who is fearless, all-knowing, the Dharma that rebalances and really gives you an accurate view of reality is something I'd be interested in, as opposed to something that's not authentic, like that. Sangha, a spiritual community that can support you and that emulates some qualities of patience and compassion and loving kindness, things like that. And so the beginning of this prayer is to take refuge, to think about from your heart, like, does that speak to me? And generating bodhichitta is the reason we're taking refuge. They say refuge is the sacred door through which the teaching is entered. We want to enter the path so we can become a Buddha, fully awakened being, and the purpose is so that we can benefit all living beings. Bodhichitta is thinking of others before ourselves, cherishing others before ourselves. So the real purpose of what we're doing is to benefit all beings. How do you do it? You do it with an omniscient mind. Then you're unlimited in doing it. Currently, in our state right now, we're somewhat limited. I don't know your minds, but as ordinary beings, that's we wouldn't know how to help perfectly. So let's just recite this prayer with any feeling you have about it. We'll recite it 3 times. Actually, normally you do the short mandala first. So let's go to that first, offering a world system, in a sense symbolic, for being able to have a teaching. You'd want to offer something. So in our minds, you just imagine, and we'll recite the short mandala first.
Sorry, if there's another copy.
Oh, yeah. Are there any more copies? I thought there was
There were, but
Okay.
Okay.
You can just look on, just share and This ground anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha field and offer it. May all transmigratory beings enjoy this pure land. Idam Guru Radha Mandala Kam Niratayami. So this is what I was telling Anna Paula, there were some typos on this one, so maybe so these should be redone.
Okay.
It's helpful. So
Right.
I don't know how your copy, but this one does help. And then taking refuge and generating bodhicitta to really put our minds in the right place for this time together. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. Thank you very much. So we left off with the 9-point death meditation. And how's that going for you? Just as a review, a couple nights ago we spoke about precious human rebirth, the 8 freedoms, 10 richnesses that make up a precious human rebirth, things such as being free from being in a hell realm, in a hungry ghost realm, in an animal realm, as a god, free from having defective faculties, from being in a place you cannot practice Dharma, things like that. We have endowments that we are human, that we live at a time when Buddha existed. The Buddha taught the entire path. The teachings are supported. People practicing, we have good faculties to be able to hear and understand the Dharma and things like that. And then what happens is the situation is rapidly passing away and soon we will die. So the idea of death and impermanence is, again, not to scare us and not to paralyze us with the fear, but to motivate us to practice so that when I do die, I'm peaceful and that I've actually made the most meaning I can in life so that I die without any regrets. And I talked about the 9-point death meditation. So as a review, without looking at your notes, so I can see what went in, we have 3 routes. This 9-point meditation is divided into 3 routes, and under each route are 3 reasonings that lead you to 3 conclusions or resolutions. The 3 main headings of this meditation, 3 routes. Anybody?
That death is certain.
Death is certain.
You don't know when it's going to happen.
You don't know when it's going to happen.
And it's going to happen to everyone. And there's
Another
a
third one. Yeah, another third one.
certain.
What benefits you at the death time?
Oh, Dharma,
spiritual
Dharma.
practice.
Only your
Dharma.
spiritual practice or the Dharma. Okay, so fantastic. Wonderful. Okay? Under death is certain. What are the 3 points under this? 3 reasonings that lead you to a deeper level, realizing I am going to die. Anybody remember?
Impermanence.
The
Well, that's
body,
part of it.
The
That's-
body
Everybody,
gets sick.
That's the second one.
Yeah, the
everybody
body.
dies. No matter
Everybody
what.
dies. Thank you. Everybody dies. Number 1. No power in the universe stops death from coming. Second one is, anybody remember? The second one is, we're another Wednesday closer to death.
Yeah.
We're another moment. Every moment you're moving closer to death, as if you got dropped out of a plane at birth without a parachute. So landing on the ground is your death, and life is this falling, this continual unfolding of experiences and things like that. Sometimes I think about it like that. The third part of death is certain. Very little time to practice Dharma. Very little
So
time to
practice
practice
now
Dharma.
and practice what?
So the resolution is, thank you,
Yeah.
for this section is what? Death is certain, it's coming.
There's little time. You need to practice.
You need to practice,
Yeah.
period. I must practice.
I must
I
practice.
must practice Dharma.
Yeah.
First resolution, okay. Second section, you don't know when you're going to die. Time of death is uncertain. First part under this, first reasoning. Look at our planet. People die
Things
at
are
all
always changing.
different ages. Yeah, people die at all different ages. Look around you. How many people die at all different ages? Second part relates to,
The body decaying.
well, partly they're related, but the second one is that there's many more things contributing to your death,
Than
supporting life.
Yeah, okay.
and the third one is the body's really fragile,
Yeah.
delicate. Okay, and this leads you to a resolution.
I must practice now.
I must practice Dharma now.
No.
I must practice now, the urgency, now, because I don't know, it could be tomorrow, it could be the end. The third part's more easier to realize. Nothing much benefits you at the death time other than your Dharma practice.
Nobody can help you. Nobody's.
So your your possessions, your money and possessions are of no help.
Friends or family.
Friends and family, no help.
Okay.
Last one,
Body.
body's no help. Thank you.
Body's not help.
Body is no help. Leads you to a resolution.
I better
I must practice Dharma.
now.
I must practice Dharma now.
And well.
And I must practice Dharma well.
Wow.
Great. Cool. Thank you. So it's good to review.
Yeah.
So the way the long rim teachings were rolled out in ancient days is they would give a teaching. At the end of it, they would review what they taught briefly. And the beginning of the next teaching, they'd review it again. So usually that third time, something goes in. You know, the first time it's a gush, and you're like, huh? The second time, and the third time. But it's always nice if you can review a little bit, and you know, each time you get a little more, you hear it again. And that's why we repeat a lot of the teachings again and again, because we didn't get it the first few times. So Lam Rim teachings, as I mentioned, Lam is path, again, Rim stages. Lam Rim teachings, it's our underlying philosophy. And I find it interesting when people find it a bit boring, they want Tantra, you know. So I've heard many times with students when a lama's coming to town, or so we hear somebody great is coming, and they go, what's he teaching? And they go, oh, Lam Rim, or, you know, it could be the 3 principles of the path is a Lam Rim teaching, and, you know, they'll be kind of put into different titles. Could be a thing of death and impermanence, precious human and they go, oh, Lam Rim, I've already had that. Like, I don't need to go to the teaching. But the thing is, it unfolds more and more. And Lama Zopa Rinpoche likes us to meditate analytically on the Lam Rim, which means you're going to analyze specifically parts of the philosophy. You would go through the 8 freedoms, one by one. So maybe 10 or 15 minutes or 20 minutes, I'm free from being an animal, in your mind, and you would be an animal in your meditation. How many of you have pets? Okay? So you're going to be your cat or your dog, and really go into the mind. In a meditation, you close your eyes, and you imagine looking out through your dog's eyes, looking out through your cat's eyes, and how they lick themselves. They're covered in fur, and the fur gets in their mouth, and then they vomit, and then they lick other parts of their bodies. Right? But you really have to be in it to experience, because the thing is, here you're a human, but it's not here. That what's it like to be free of being an animal? Now our pets, it's like, I watched Fred today. This is Anna Paula's dog, and I was kind of like, he's really reached the peak of the animal realm, the guy. He's in the sun on the easy chair today, this basset hound, right? He's like, then he wanted to eat something. I mean, I thought, pretty good life for him, but most animals are not living that way. So pick an animal in the sea, pick an animal in an undeveloped country, be a snake if you want, be a snake, so pick something and stay there with it for a bit and let it sink in and penetrate to here, where then you focus your concentration that, animals that are tearing flesh of another animal to eat, and I need to do it to survive, and my babies are starving because I haven't caught anything, and the brutality of the African plains, of what, it's brutal. It's, so you kind of really get into that, and then you come back to your life, 15, 20 minutes, and appreciate, I'm a human, I'm not an animal. So you slowly, that's how you analytically meditate on the different points of the precious human rebirth, and then you would do a similar thing with the 9-point death meditation. So slowly taking death is certain, everybody dies. Slowly, just take that alone. And you think of, as I mentioned before, the most creative people on the planet did not figure out a way out of death. Einstein did not sort it. The Buddha died. Like, how is it possible that I think? I'm not going to, you have to go over, with analytical meditation, you go over and over and over with scriptural references, something you read in the books, something you heard in teaching, something else on a piece of paper, something from the internet that you got from a course, something over, and your own life experience. You come from every angle until the intellectual understanding, I am going to die, moves to an experiential realization. I'm going to die. That's what shifts your life and motivates you to practice. So the Lama Rim's designed like that. It's very powerful. It's very, very powerful. Okay. Everybody okay? And so there are meditations that correspond. And I didn't do any of these 2 nights ago. So that correspond to these segments. Let me just double check what. Okay. Okay, so the next step I wanted to go through, if we have more time, it's nice you can do meditations if we have, like the retreat will be very nice this weekend, because we can do meditations corresponding. It's always nice when centers, and you guys, it's great, you're getting this going, where and I know New York is doing this, our Shanti Davis Center and other centers, many other centers, so they'll be running a program like this for several weeks, discovering Buddhism, and then they'll try to hold at the end a day long of the meditations People on their own have homeworks to do the meditations. Sometimes if I'm teaching one, I'll lead a short meditation in the thing, but the courses have the printouts of meditations and you just follow. And then they'll have a day or a weekend where we can do some of the meditations like that. So it's really great that we're going to have this weekend. So what happens after you get a sense of, spend some time with death and impermanence, is you realize that there could be some less than fortunate realms that you take rebirth in. Buddhism does teach about different realms. I mentioned when we talked about the freedoms, we have a hell realm, moving up the ladder, a hungry ghost or preta realm of starving spirits, an animal realm. So each one gets a little bit better, and you don't go to these realms forever. Like in some spiritualities, you're going to burn in hell forever. It's not like that. You go to those realms based on the karmic causes that got you into those realms, and when you exhaust that based on the suffering you experience in the realms, you move out of those realms to something with less suffering. There's no set way you move out of it because it's all based on karma, and karma is very intricate. Okay, so in understanding that you want to avoid these lower realms, and you really, in the Lam-rim, there's some detailed descriptions of them, and it is designed to have you revolted, experience some revulsion from it, so that it motivates you. What do I need to do now? So part of it is you take refuge, to find a source of protection for you. Okay? And so we actually have a formal refuge ceremony that people can do if they want to acknowledge Buddhism as our path. However, just to understand refuge on its own, and again I said it's a sacred door through which the teaching is entered. So let's look at refuge. What is refuge about? So, and I've mentioned this I think before in other classes here when I taught, is when you have a problem going on, what are your coping mechanisms? I'm just curious. What do you do? Small problems are one thing, and then big problems are a second thing. What do you do with general small problems? Something pops up. What alleviates it for you?
Putting it in perspective.
What's that?
A lot of times just breathing.
Just breathing. That can be helpful. Putting it in perspective.
Talking
to people about it.
Yes.
Yep.
And give some insights.
Mm-hmm.
Stepping back and looking at it in a different...
Yep, stepping back, giving yourself, again, nice to give yourself perspective like that. Get a sense.
Mantras or praying.
Mantras and prayers, right?
So being a witness to it, and not getting sucked into it.
Yep. So you're all very...
Faith in your...
Faith in the practice, and yep. So you're all very, very experienced here, I can see. Okay.
Glad I didn't
So-
answer.
What were you going to say?
No, I was gonna say I just go right into like action. Like I use it to
Go
try to. No, but like I use it as like a competition. Like okay, I got it, and then I end up very tired.
Right.
So.
Yes. So the other thing is, what if you have a bigger problem? How's it going in your mind? You may do the same thing. You may breathe. I'm going to talk it out with people, but what are some initial coping mechanisms? Something major happens, and how's your mind?
The mind,
Worried.
revolves again and again around the same,
Right. And look at some of the coping mechanisms and I look at this with a lot of people, and sometimes myself so the coping mechanisms, and you may have a problem that resurfaces. It's always there. This is going on. And so what a lot of people do is, and what you were just mentioning are the really healthy things to do. But what happens to a lot of people is they go to the refrigerator.
Yes.
They turn on the TV.
Right.
Now some people,
wine.
right. People will drink wine.
Yeah.
People, exactly. Smoke, drink wine, recreational drugs. Now some people will get into physical exercise. They're going to go out, walk on the beach. You got a beach here. It's beautiful. They'll watch TV, escape to a movie, put music on. Now it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with those things, but it gives you some temporary relief from the problem, and then the problem is there again. Like it doesn't solve it. So refuge is what solves it, and what you do with refuge is explore and read in some of the books the qualities of the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. So, in understanding their qualities, you are inspired and realizing this could be an infallible source of protection for me from more suffering. So, and the other thing is, what I find so interesting is we go to family and friends to discuss our problem. Some people may pay a therapist. Now this is a professional person. So you've got a bigger problem and you really want to, some people might take their kids there. The kid has a problem, no problem, no worries. But the other thing is you do discuss with family and friends this problem that you have. Are your family and friends enlightened?
No.
It's something to think about, right? Do they have high levels of realization? Because they might.
No.
Okay.
No.
But I'm very willing to go to them. And this is people that are a little bit more on the path that, let's say, have met qualified teachers or Lama Zopa Rinpoche, highly realized beings like him, and they're afraid to talk to Rinpoche, they're afraid to seek advice from Rinpoche. But he's somebody who, I will say, from my understanding, and my experience, capital K, he knows what is best for you to do. But no, instead I'm going to ask all these other people, but I don't really want to go to the source. That's scary. And it's scary because the truth is there. And the truth is scary sometimes. The truth is a lot. I like these some passages in the Bible where there was something about why we couldn't really see God because it would freak people out. To have something that pure, depends what you mean by God. Buddhism doesn't have belief in that. But it's, peeling back. It would be like somebody was like peeling back the sky. That's alarming. Now, the sky can't be peeled back, but get the idea. There's something so pure and so it's overwhelming for us because we're not around beings like that normally. So I find it interesting in my own path how I would check with everyone else except, somebody who really knew that could tell me. And so that's interesting with refuge, exploring the qualities of the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. For instance, the Buddha, there's many qualities you can read, but the main ones I always gravitate to are that the Buddha has fearless, completely fearless. What would that be like in your life? Completely fearless. Was it last night I told the subway story went on, but I was telling you about this guy in the subway. I was mentioning it here 2 nights ago in New York, just happened. So last night I kind of got into what really happened, and I was talking about negative reactions. And so I was bringing up the thing of is how mindfulness practice, which is not Dharma necessarily, it's not Buddhist, but it's very helpful, and how you can combine it with Buddhist practice. So what happened is I noticed that this guy was scaring me in the subway. It was getting later. I thought he was on drugs. He was glommed onto me. He was too close to me. And I didn't know what the deal was and what was he going to leave me alone after like 15, 20 minutes. What was going to happen. And you don't know sometimes. Somebody has a weapon. It's in the States. So somehow he attached himself to me. And so I was noticing I was getting nervous. But I was also taking care of business and up to the booth to check out, was there a train, down again, the worker said no train, up and, back and forth. And he's with me, yelling loudly, cursing, like, and it was offensive, I was just like rattled from him, it was like, And then I go back up to the booth to talk to the very nice man in the booth about, is there a train? And he keeps saying yes. And the guy's right over my shoulder, yelling and screaming at the guy in the booth. And so I kept saying, excuse me, like trying to be like, excuse me, and he just would ignore me and go, So finally, after him ignoring and I'm he's not leaving me alone, we're downstairs. I don't think I told you this part. So we're downstairs, but I lost my mindfulness because he was so in my face. I couldn't think, and the workers finally, this one worker down there, and he's like, lady, there's no train. There's no more trains. Like, trying to help me, to say, like, don't wait down here, because there's no trains, right? But there was this announcement about the E. I was looking for the A, the E train. Okay, so whatever. And the guy's like, there's no trains. And this guy's like, with me, somehow my date for the night. And he's like a young teen guy, I don't know, kind of attractive guy, but I'm just like, look. And I kept saying, please, So if all of a sudden an announcement comes on, subway announcement. This is just a joking tangent, but years ago, I don't know if any of you ever watched Saturday Night Live, right? Years ago, they had a skit, New York Subway Announcers School. Can you imagine? Yeah, there's a classroom. Now, years ago, the subway announcements have gotten better, meaning you can understand them. I could never understand them for years.
Yeah.
It's a big
Honestly,
on the mic.
So this Saturday Night Live skit, hysterical. And they're like, okay, everyone, repeat after me, right? There's the instructor, and the instructor would say, and it was just, when I saw that, I was just, I'm like, it's like that, you can't understand anything. And I've been on subway platforms over the years. I flew in from California where I live, visiting my sister. I'm on the platform, no train for like 20, we're all waiting. The platform's packed with people, rush hour, waiting. An announcement comes on. I get none of it. None of it. You couldn't hear it. There was nothing. It was just a static. Half of my platform leaves and goes down and comes up on the other side. I mean, I literally was like, did they get some kind of message from the universe? Like, how could they have understood that? There's no way. I mean, it was a mystery. Mystery, waiting for a train, and I'm like, I look at the guy next to me, I'm like, did they hear something? Another announcement comes on, a few minutes later. I got none of it again, right? And they leave the platform and they come back and they stand again back on the platform. I thought I was on candid camera. I thought this is a joke, right? They're filming me or something. Anyway, it's ridiculous. So now the announcement, I'm with this guy in the subway, no train, and the announcement comes on, and I want to hear, because, I'm like, okay, maybe they'll have a thing. And he starts screaming. And I can't hear. And he's like, F this and F that. So profane, I was so over it. So I turned, because I dropped my mindfulness for a minute of like, how would I like to respond? But he wasn't listening to me. And I decided I need to be stronger. I need to say something stronger. And I turned to him and I said, please shut up. I'm trying to listen to the announcement. Like I couldn't get him to, but later I was like, I shouldn't have said that. Like it was, but I couldn't get him. And so finally he kind of backed off. But then he said to me, are you telling me to shut up? like he got, and then I was like, oh no, oh God, like he's gonna, but there were people there, but I thought, who knows? And the next thing, I was saved by the E train. Okay, so the E comes, I'm like, there's a train, not the train I wanted, because the E was going nowhere, okay? It was going like, a few more stops, World Trade Center, nowhere that I wanted to get, no, it was nothing, it was like a few more stops. And the doors open, and he looks at me, and he goes, it's our train. Like the guy's just, I'm like, I don't know whose train, it's not my train, but he goes, hey, this is our train, let's go, come on, it's our train. And I just stood there watching him, and he got on the train, and the door shut, and, may the force be with you. I let him, I was like, but it's just in a moment of when you notice that your mind's not where you want it to be, and perfect time to take refuge. Like to really kind of be like, sometimes I'll be like, Rinpoche, so fearlessness for me, Buddha quality, I'm into that. Because I want to responded like that. It came out of my fear, where I dropped my mindfulness, I got rattled by this guy, woman alone at night trying to get, I was a little bit like, okay, you have to take care sometimes, and then I say the wrong thing, but as a Buddha, you wouldn't have any fear. I've seen Rinpoche, on a trip to Tibet, many years ago, the dogs we were warned are really vicious. And I met people that were attacked by packs of dogs, and they had to go back to Kathmandu to get rabies shots, and really serious. So Rinpoche, we got off a bus, and we were warned to walk in groups at night. If you go out, carry sticks, and you don't be off alone at night, and the dogs can attack you. And so we got out of a bus in the late afternoon, and all these dogs in the monastery, and they came over to Rinpoche, and everybody's like, go get Rinpoche, don't let them, And, Rinpoche being who he was, put his hand out, and all the dogs were wagging their tails. And I had put my hand out, I think, with fear, and they would have bit me. But Rinpoche, so when you don't have fear, you also end up diffusing certain energy, right?
Yeah.
So that's a quality I think is fantastic about the Buddha. Yeah. And there's many, many, many qualities like that. So you would take time to study, understand. The other thing, having an omniscient mind. The Buddha has an omniscient mind, all-knowing. Well, that sounds pretty good to me, because people come and ask my advice. There's my dad I was mentioning, my elderly dad, last year went through some difficult health changes. It's actually been going on for the last 2 years. Anybody aging like that, and sometimes I don't know what is the best thing for him. Wouldn't it be cool to know? And you know if your kids get sick, and you know if this retreat comes up, should I do that or should I do this trip, or what's going to happen with the house being built, or this happening, or this person moving, or what should I do with the group meeting, and you would know what to do. You would know every moment you're there. So it's an amazing space, just those two things alone. Is that something I would take refuge in? Sounds pretty good, right? Excuse me. Dharma Jul, the philosophy, and we're going through some of the philosophy. So what I love about this type of Buddhism is, please investigate what I am saying. It's not about me forcing anything down your throat. I'm not interested in you becoming a Buddha. It's your own experience with the teachings. If something resonates with you deeply, if something makes you happier, meaning if you apply it to your life and put something into practice, it makes you happier and more peaceful, great. If it doesn't work for you, it doesn't resonate, just put it to the side and find something else. So the Dharma, you have to investigate, please, everything I'm saying and really apply it to your own life. And over time, and as you learn more and study more and read more and things like that. So the philosophy, the overall philosophy is, it's something to be, that you would check and really be discerning. Is this something, when I go through each of the topics, does it make sense to me? I like Precious Human Rebirth, the beginning of the Lam Rim, because it helps me practice gratitude. And I've done many of these meditations, but the thing is, it's very helpful to keep them going, because initially you may get what's called a contrived realization, a contrived insight. And we have insights all the time. Some people think when you say realization, they need to have like tears pouring down their face and I saw blue lights coming out of your head, and it's not like that. You have insights all the time. Like that, we grow. So sometimes you have a deeper insight or realization, but what would happen is initially with the Lam Rim, you're going to have an experience, something deeper that's forced. Meaning I'm doing it because I'm bringing my mind to this place in meditation again and again and again, but eventually, through continuing the analytical meditation, the realization becomes uncontrived, where I think of Precious Human Rebirth and I'm just there. My life is amazing. I'm going to use my life in the best way. This is such a rare opportunity, and you're totally there with it. Not just words and not intellectual understanding, but it's here. So it takes time. This is a process, slowly. So the philosophy we would analyze and we would go through some of the topics like that, but ultimately you'd want to explore emptiness, the nature of reality. That's what really cuts out the root of your suffering. And that's the main thing that you would be taking refuge in. That's the ultimate refuge, is emptiness. That's the real refuge, like that. And then we take refuge in the Sangha, which could be a spiritual community, a group like this, because it can lend support to for like-minded people. But we also could take refuge in the Arya Sangha. Ultimate Sangha are those that have had a direct perception of emptiness, like that. But along the lines, we have groups like this, we have monks and nuns, people like that, the spiritual path. Buddha jewel, Dharma jewel, Sangha jewel. The 3 jewels, we say, of refuge. The 3 jewels of refuge, or the triple gem, is what we take refuge in, like that. We used to joke because the jewels, sometimes there's a lot of Jews that are into Buddhism. Like myself, I'm from a Jewish background. Many, many, many Jewish people involved in Buddhism. I'm not really sure why. It's amazing in all the different traditions. So at one point, somebody was teaching. We were joking many years ago, and students sometimes mishear stuff. So somebody was like, the 3 Jews of refuge. So there's like John Landau, Nick Rebush, and who's the third one? But there's so many that it's interesting. So 3 jewels of refuge. But let's look at the jewels of refuge we normally take refuge in. What do you normally take refuge in? You wake up in the morning. What's the first thoughts in your mind? Coffee.
I didn't die.
That I didn't die. Great. And what in the back? Alejandro?
No, which is the refuge that we take, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha.
Well, that's one thing, but what kind of, when the ordinary mind slips in, and I forget the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha,
My phone.
what are the 3 jewels that pop up?
Phone.
Okay.
Phone.
Phone, coffee, shower, right? Or
Yeah.
and what's that all swimming around? What's that all about?
Me, myself, and I.
There you go, that's it. Isn't that it? Me, myself, and I?
Yeah.
I, me, mine, some people say. Me, myself, and I. I mean, it's so dominant. And I'm constantly like, yeah, but what about me? But what about me? What about me? Okay? So it's something to think about. Let's rebalance and think about the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, or just the qualities of them, of something that is really valuable like that. Okay.
A question.
Yes.
What about taking refuge before practice in the gurus? Like the Lama Sangye, Lama Chet?
Mhm.
So
That's nice as
that
well.
and
And
then
then,
in bodhicitta? Like
like if you're doing a practice,
Yes.
how would you start it?
yes.
That's no. I do have something on my website under the video watch, the watch tab. I think of how to set up just a basic meditation practice. And what I tend to like to do, if we're first talking about meditation, is to get some meditation going before I might open the book. And sometimes I have the book on a place as well. Like it's nice to have a meditation space where you might have 10 minutes and you read something, and then I'm going to meditate on that. So it's always very integrated, and it kind of mirrors my retreats, because in my retreats, the table that I'm sitting at, I'm there most of the day. Like that's where I'm doing most of the stuff. So you kind of get used to a study practice as well with the meditation. So the meditation practice could be posture of the body, getting that 7-point posture, getting your motivation set, relaxing the body and relaxing into the posture and making sure there's a good motivation. You might do a 9-round breathing to clear out channels. You might want to do some shine, which is calm abiding, placing the mind on one object like the breath. So keeping it there just to settle the mind and build some concentration. And then from there you could go into reading a prayer and doing some analytical meditation. You could read this, we're going to read a little bit of this today, The Foundation of All Good Qualities we started 2 nights ago. You can read and then stop at a stanza, and then you do 10-20 minutes of meditation. And then continue on. So what I would do probably is sometimes I like to get the motivation first in my mind of just do some shine, and then I might go into some prayers, which would be, you could do refuge and bodhichitta, and then sometimes like in that, the practice booklet, and also in the volume 1 gold prayer book that FPMT has, there's 2 pages that are just morning prayers, and it's part of the retreat book now.
Right, the daily practice is not
The daily
reading.
practice. So it's
Yes.
basically just some very preliminary prayers of refuge and bodhicitta, and then sometimes there's an extra bodhicitta verse or something you can add. There is purifying the place, multiplying offerings, 7-limb prayer, mandala offering. That would be a standard. You could just go through that. And you can go through it more quickly too. Once you know the prayers and you understand the meaning, but you want to try to not just recite things where you don't have any thought in it. And then later you go, I just did a Vajrasattva practice, I wasn't even thinking about it. I was thinking about my kids. So then you have to go back and do it, because you really want to keep the mindfulness there. Like, I'm focused on this, I know what this is about. If you're not sure what all the prayers are about, slowly you can find out. Like that. But that would be something like that order. And then I might read a Lamrim prayer and then do some Lamrim meditation, then dedicate. And if you have anything else you can do like that. Okay. Okay, so after the refuge thing, it's very helpful to balance, to really get clear about getting me, myself, and I a little bit out of the way, like that. So it's not that you're not taking care of yourself, you need to, and your families, but within balance and really approaching this path of what would really protect me from more suffering. And then what happens is the end of the Lam Rim, we move into, well, now that I'm moving along this path, and I know I have this great rebirth, it could end very soon, I could end up in a lower realm, that motivates me to practice, and I really want to practice in the right way with the refuge and the 3 jewels. So then I need to know, I have to learn how to conduct myself. And this brings in the teachings on karma, how to conduct myself. So karma is intricate, and it is a law of cause and effect. A law of cause and effect. And karma itself is a Sanskrit word that means action. It's the movement of mind. The movement of mind. And what it means is that everything you think, say, and do will have a result in the future. So this sometimes frightens people. I did all these things, I killed all these insects as a kid, but if you didn't know, you can't help it, it's done. You can always purify. Can always purify. So what we look at with karma are 4 characteristics of karma. We cannot understand all the intricacies of karma until you have a highly realized mind. But what we can look at are some understanding. So one of them is the 4 characteristics. These are the 4 characteristics of karma. First one is karma is definite. Karma is definite. And I know Tibetan Buddhism has a lot of the 4 of this, and the 6 of that, and the 3 of that. Takes a little time to get used to things, but sometimes it helps people organize. Okay? So karma is definite means that if you say something rude to someone and you behave in a negative way, you are definitely going to reap a negative result of that and suffer. So anything you do negatively, say negatively, act negatively, definitely creates suffering for you. Anything positive that you do, think, or say definitely creates happiness for you. You're planting seeds in your consciousness, in your mind. Mind and consciousness is the same. I'm using those as synonyms. The mind in Tibetan Buddhism is different than the brain. The mind is not physical, the brain is physical. So the mind exists in a gross level, a subtle level, and a most subtle level, which is its clear, light nature, very pure essence of nature, but it is not physical, but it has a unique way of combining with the body. And the body exists on a gross level, subtle level, and a most subtle level. And the most subtle level is a most subtle wind, it's an energy, and we know this in other spiritualities and other practices. For instance, in the Chinese system it would be called qi. In the Hindu Ayurvedic system, prana. In Tibetan system, lung, or wind. Okay, and it's physical in matter. It's physical in nature, it's matter. And the most subtle mind is a very unique ability to be attached and mounted on the most subtle wind, but they are distinct entities, separate. One physical, one not physical. The mind is not the body. And that's hard for us to understand because we think it's the brain. Mind, in its most subtle entity, is located at the heart center, not in the organ, the heart, but in a subtle energy network and system like that. And it has an ability to continue on after this body finishes. It's mounted on that most subtle wind that will leave the body with the consciousness, and they'll go on to an intermediate state and have other experiences until it finds the conditions to take another rebirth. So we have this belief in reincarnation. And that's what makes karma really matter. You know, is that there's things from the past that are ripening now. I may not have any control over it, and I'm doing things. What I'm most concerned with right now is not the past lives, but where I'm headed. So I want to be very careful now what I'm doing with my body, speech, and mind. so that it will create positive results in the future, including great rebirths, where I can practice, continue to evolve, and have perfect conditions for that. Make sense?
Yeah.
So 4 characteristics. First is karma's definite. So again, mentioning you do something positive, definitely get a good result, happiness for yourself. And it's like planting an acorn. If you plant an acorn, you definitely get an oak tree. You don't get an apple tree. Like that. Second principle of karma, karma increases. This frightens people. Karma increases. And that means you do one small deed, one small good deed, right? And you enhance the good deed by dedicating the merits of that deed, which invests it and keeps it kind of sealed in without it being destroyed by anger in your mind. And that deed will grow and expand for future imprints in your mind, like that. But the same thing happens with negative deeds. So I did kill a lot of insects as a kid. I didn't know any better. That's how I was taught. And my parents, you know, when the porch needed to be cleaned in the spring, my mom would like send me out there with the vacuum, and I would, you know, every spider, great, you know. I swatted wasps at the, you know, 4th grade playground between my hands. I did it partly so my classmates wouldn't get stung, but with great glee, I killed, you know, all these wasps and things like that. So I didn't know any better. I used to go fishing with my father, and nothing I can do about it. But you can purify. You can purify through various practices, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. So, so we do the best we can do. But they'd say, you know, one insect that you killed without any purification done for it could be like killing an elephant later, which is heavier. Now the reason is you're not saying that one life is more valuable than another. It's just when you kill an insect, they tend to die really quickly because they're very small. But an elephant takes a long time to die, so much more suffering, like that. So again, the best thing we can do is to be aware of activities from this present moment forward at this point, and do effective purification practices. Third characteristic of karma is that you do not experience somebody else's, the causes that they make. So you're in a plane crash, the plane is going to crash, you can't blame the person next to you. You've got lousy karma. You know, I'm blaming you that I'm going to die in the plane crash. You have your own seeds to die in a plane crash. So there is collective karma. You know, for instance, the Tibetans in Tibet, when the communist Chinese invaded in the 50s, and by 59 they took over, and since then they've slaughtered about 1.3 million Tibetans, they collectively had this karma to suffer. Could they have been part of another army in the past, in some future past, you know, time? Possibly. They may not have all been together in that army, they may have different armies, but somehow they had this killing karma together to experience it at the same time en masse. And that's how genocides are. That's what Tibetan Buddhism would say, like that. Same thing in a plane crash. You know, all these people together, all these people experiencing the earthquake, all these people in Florida experiencing the hurricane, have that karmic seed ripening at that moment to experience a hurricane. But then again, karma's so intricate. So there's people here that have the karma to experience a hurricane and don't have any other place to go. They have to ride it out, okay? There's some people that are here to experience a hurricane and they can get on a plane and go someplace else. They can drive to higher ground. They have other family to stay with inland. So everybody has a different way the result, but you're all suddenly hit with the hurricane. Okay, now we have to decide what we're going to do. And that's how karma is so intricate to understand. Well, why did it ripen for this person like that and this person like that? And you need a more highly realized mind to understand that. Or a highly realized mind. Because I don't have a realized mind. Okay. So the fourth characteristic is that karmic seeds never lose their potential to ripen over time. They never lose their potential to ripen over time. Meaning, I killed all those insects, and eventually it would come to fruition. There'd be some kind of killing karma that would come back to me, which can come back in various ways, which I'll explain in a moment, unless I purify. You can purify the cause first before it ripens. And so, for instance, you might have had a karma, a result coming, let's say from all the killing, where I get a brain tumor and die, right? But that hasn't happened yet, but I get headaches. So maybe it manifests as a headache. Okay, well, headaches, okay, I can deal with that. You know, they're not going to kill me, let's hope. So karma can ripen like that. You do proper purification and you purify the cause. I did have a friend, and this is an interesting thing with Rinpoche. If you do choose to ever seek advice from somebody with high realization like that, and he gives you practice, and I have heard various lamas sometimes urgently giving someone a practice. Your life's in danger. I have heard this. So Rinpoche gave a friend of mine, she wanted to get her life practice, and it could be many things to do, and it's for your life, so you do it, daily over your lifetime, as much as you can, as best as you can. And we talk about a bodhisattva practice. It's a purification practice. It's a deity. And we do it with a certain visualization, with a mantra that we're reciting. And if you're doing it in retreat mode, it's a long mantra. So if you're doing it in retreat mode, it can take 2 to 3 months to complete full-time retreat. So that's a chunk of time for people. I know some people that do a little bit every day. It's fantastic, right? So my friend got instructions from Rinpoche some years ago that she had to do 700,000 Vajrasattva mantras. Instead, 100,000 will take you 2 to 3 months. She had to do 700,000. So she told me that, and I was like, that's a lot. Like, he must see something. There must be something going on. I didn't say that to her, but I was like, it's a little alarming. But do you have faith? And so whatever happened, she never got started. She was very upset by how many there were, and it's, but this is for your mind. And you got the advice from somebody who knows. So it's a lot, but now you know what to do. Like a lot of people say, should I do this practice, or I like this practice, but is that the best one for me? So then you know what to do. So she never got started. It was one thing after another, excuses and excuses. Then she came to our center in California and decided she's going to start for 2 weeks. It was a big deal. We were all excited. I was very happy. Great. She used to be a very particular person. It was kind of challenging. But the 2 weeks she picked, we were doing construction. Like, loud construction. Cabin, something. So I told her immediately. And I said, let's find another time. Like, we're going to do construction. We're going to be right in the middle of it. These are the dates we're doing it. She had somewhat of a flexible schedule, but she was rigid. And she says, no, that's when I'm coming. And I said, there's going to be a lot of noise. Like, bring earplugs. Like, and I do know people that have sustained my Vajrasattva retreat. I did at Laudo, and I had a dog that barked the entire 2 months that barked and like near the room, but it was like, sometimes I didn't hear it, and sometimes I, wanted to kill it. I was really like, stop the dog from barking. It's just hard, and you just deal with it. And so I said to her, please bring earplugs. Anyway, she came, and after 2 days, she left, and she was so angry at me. She was so angry. So this went on and on. She got ovarian cancer, and she died. And I used to go over and take care of her and help her and do these practices. And she said to me, what happens when you get cancer is you're tired all the time, and you can't focus, and you're thinking about dying, and you're scared, and your mind's not clear. And she'd be lying on a sofa, and I would sit on the floor and do these practices for her out loud. And she one time turned to me really abruptly and kind of sharply, and she said, I should have done the Vajrasattva. Like, she just felt that. So sometimes it's not to scare you from asking advice, but it's better to do what they advise. And I one time had Rinpoche say I had a life obstacle. I had to leave Vajrapani and move after 17 years in California. I had to move in 3 weeks and pack everything up. And so he said, your life's in danger. Like, I was supposed to leave, and I was supposed to lead all these retreats. Some months. And every time he checked each month, he said, very, very bad. It's very bad to stay, right? And then I said, well, what about if I stay through December? And then he checked again, he said, very bad. And then I said, well, November I'm supposed to lead he said, very bad. And then October, and then so then he said, leave within 3 weeks, your life's in danger. Right? So I took it seriously. Yeah, he didn't say practice, but he said, get out of here within 3 weeks, you need to leave before the month is over. And so I took it seriously, packing up. It was, that was it. Everything was happening, and I knew I had something else planned, but I just thought I would leave later, and so it was happening. And I was packing, and then we had a big ordination in San Francisco, and they needed the monks and nuns to go up, and so my car broke down on the way up. I just had 10 more days of the car. It was an old car, and I was giving it to someone else. And my car broke down. Fortunately, on a side road, not going that fast, this big chunk of metal fell out of the bottom, big greasy thing. And it would have been dangerous on the highway. Like, clearly it would have been, and it felt like it took the obstacle. Because I was listening to Rinpoche, I was following the advice. And so it ripened like that, where the car would not go at all, would not move. But I got it fixed for quite easily later, another day, and I had it but I felt like it really took some kind of obstacle that somehow, and I left within 3 weeks, and I moved and everything was fine after, there was no problem. So there are these things that ripen. You can't see how they ripen. A highly realized being would see it. And if you get the chance to consult, then you can check. So, and I'll never forget when the car broke down, and I always laugh about this with guys, right? Guys know cars, right? Well, I used to work on cars a little bit with my dad when I was a kid. So, and I know some stuff about cars, but, I knew my car. I knew how. So I was driving a monk, friend of mine, to the ordination because they really needed him as a fully ordained monk there. And I'm driving, and there were several cars of nuns and different people going up behind us. But we're going, and he goes, let's just go together, the two of us, and then we'll have some time in San Francisco. It'll be great. We'll relax and take the day off. But we're not that far into the journey, and I'm driving, and there's this clunk, and the car's not going. Anyway, I can't drive it. It's a stick shift thing. So I'm in the car, and I'm kind of assessing, no, it's definitely not going. And I try to turn on again, and I'm like, oh, okay, it's not going. We're stuck. So he's like, go, there's people behind you, go. And I said, I can't, the car's broken. The car's not working, it won't go. And he's like, go. And I said, no. I said, we need to push the car out of the way. We need to get out of the way. It was a little bit of rush hour, but it was small rush hour. So we pushed the car down around the corner to go, wait. And I'm looking back on the freeway, not the freeway, but the highway, because I knew something fell out, I heard something. And I'm looking at this disc, and I want to pick it up because it belongs to my car. I want this thing in the roadway, this greasy thing. So I leave him with the car, and we push out of the way, and I run back, and the cars are going over it, but it's okay. And I run back, and finally there's no cars, and it's really greasy, so I pick it up, and I didn't have anything to hold, but I pick it up, and I'm now carrying it in front of me because I don't want it dripping on my robes, and I'm carrying it, it's this big, and I get over to him, and I'm standing there, I'm kind of thinking, I think I've got some paper towels, and I'll wrap it in that, and I'll put it in the trunk, and then I'll call the tow guy. And I'm there, and to which he declares to me now that he's been in the front, he's got in the driver's seat to get the car started. Like he because he's a guy, he thought he could fix it, right? And he gets in the car, and to which he declares, as I'm standing there, and turns to me to declare, the car's not working. Like I didn't, I'm like, and I said, yeah, I know, because this is supposed to be attached to it, It was so funny, I'll never forget that. I'm like, oh, you just determined that? How insightful. So 4 characteristics of karma, again, are... It's definite.
Okay.
Increases.
It increases, thank you.
It's not transferable.
It doesn't transfer. You don't experience somebody else's karma.
For your karma.
That's right, you don't experience somebody else's karma.
And they can...
The result of someone else's seed.
All seeds can
continue, they never lose the potential to
power.
ripen. They never lose their power to ripen. Mm-hmm. Yeah, fantastic. Okay. So what we need to understand about karma is it's intricate, and it ripens in different ways, and a lot of what the factor is your motivation. Your motivation is key in the karma. Most of our karma is mixed. I had a good motivation and I blew it. I said the wrong thing to the person. you know. Or I really was thinking about myself, but I went over and offered them flowers, you know, but it was really kind of self-centered. Or I really wanted to know what they thought about me, or I wanted to, you know, have people see me do that or something. You know, we have mixed stuff. Sometimes it's very genuine, really nice karma. So it's very rounded out by the object that you're doing something with. So if you are making an offering to Lama Zopa Rinpoche, somebody with high realizations, you tend to get a better result than making an offering to your dog, just based on the nature of how that highly realized being can benefit beings, like that. And if you are, it also depends on the heaviness of the action. Sadistic killing is really heavy karma, as opposed to me killing the insects on the porch because my mother told me to. Very, very different outcome, like that. The more glee I had about doing it, also a problem. You know, if you're happy about doing something negative. But it certainly wasn't so much sadistic killing of torturing them, you know, things like that. And I didn't really know any better as well. And it can be heavy due to repetitive quality. Gossip is like that. We just yakety yak about meaningless stuff. And that gets kind of heavy based on the frequency and the familiarity, like that. So those are kind of just some things I wanted to say about karma. And what we learn is how then to conduct ourselves by abiding in what I would call the 10 ethical guidelines and avoiding the 10 non-virtues. The 10 non-virtues we just went through with our children's program today. 3 of them relate to your body, 4 of them relate to your speech, and 3 of them relate to your mind. The 3 you avoid with your body are killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct. So most of you are living this way anyway. The ethical guidelines would be respecting life and taking care of life or saving life when you can. The ethical guideline against stealing would be honoring your possessions and possessions of others, particularly if you borrow something from someone, use something of someone else's. And the third one of avoiding sexual misconduct would be cultivating healthy relationships, particularly intimate ones, and respecting the intimate relationships of others that others have, and not interfering with 2 people in relationship. The 4 related to your speech are we avoid, and these are in order of heaviness, we avoid lying, we avoid divisive speech, we avoid harsh speech, and we avoid gossip or idle chatter. So lying does relate to exaggerating and telling white lies, but telling white lies has a very different motivation. So often you're telling a white lie not to harm someone, not to hurt somebody. So it's a very different outcome than creating huge deceit, like that. Divisive speech and harsh speech are really heavy. They create disharmonious homes, workplaces, communities, neighborhoods, and cause people to, for you to work in very fractured workplaces, like that, communities that don't come together and people don't get along and things like that. Harsh speech, yelling and cursing at people, can also create, one of the results, a karmic result, is that you live down a rough road. Because it's kind of rough when somebody's yelling and cursing and stuff like that. You live down a rough road if the roughness of the road bothers you. That's a result of harsh speech. So the Vajrapani Road, where I used to live in California, is a 1/4 mile dirt gravel. It bothered me. It bothered many of the people that lived there. It bothered our cars. Your cars needed more maintenance. They were bouncing along this road. And a lot of our guests and members didn't like the road, and it prevented people from coming to us. And it was very rough in the winter when it rained. Very dangerous. A single mountain road, right? And we had logging trucks that used the road that used to damage it and never take any responsibility for it. Our neighbors used the road, but we were the only business down the road, so they never would chip in to pay for any repairs. and the county tended to put their new work crews on it as kind of training them, so they would ruin the road. It was just a continual thing. So our community realized that maybe we should look at our harsh speech, and we were kind of not doing well, and we were talking about each other behind our back, and and kind of trashing each other and saying, and just being rude and disrespectful. And this is a Buddhist community, but we're human beings. Like, people, have their things. And 15 of us lived on the property, and then we had a few other additional board members, and we decided to hire a Buddhist therapist, Karuna, he's coming, because we wanted a Buddhist, and we wanted somebody that was aligned with us, and we liked him, and we knew him, and we trusted him. And he worked with us for 4 years. Group counseling based in narrative therapy and Lam Rim. And it was transformative. We went specifically after the harsh speech, because we realized, and it was hard work. It was really hard work, and he would do pairs of people that weren't getting along, and what's going on with this one, and it was really valuable work, and a lot of it was about what's your story. What's the story you get going, and as long as you haven't had a direct perception of emptiness, your story is always wrong. And that was very liberating. But 2 years into this process, and we were getting very, very good with each other, and we had permission to say to each other, did I tell you a story before?
No.
Anyway, we had permission to say, like, if a staff member took me aside and started trashing somebody else, not constructively, I would have permission, to say, I'm really not comfortable with what you're saying right now. Is there any way I can help you with this? Rather than, we each were getting really good, and as a result, we all cleaned up our speech. So in 2 years into the process, I get a phone call, and I was all over the county about the road. I raised money for the road. We wrote letters to the county from our members. I knew everyone in the county. I knew every department that would deal with our road, and I knew everybody that worked in those departments. And I went out on my own and worked on the road when it would rain and divert water and work, and I knew about French drains, and I learned everything about culverts and grading and ditching and crowning, and I could speak road with all of them, okay? I learned, because I was like, we got to fix the road, and So 2 years into this process, I get a call from a man named Dave Hope, okay? So David is from the same as my name, Amy. Beloved is what it comes from. Beloved Hope calls me. And he says, I'm with this such and such department of the, and I'm like, who? What? And he goes, I work on road surfaces. I'm like, huh? Hello? And he says, I just got a grant from the government for $250,000. And I've narrowed it down. I finally narrowed it down. And he goes, this road over, and he tells me another road. And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, why is he calling me? And he goes, but I selected Kings Creek Road, your road. And I'm just kind of curious if you're interested in me doing this work. Okay, so this is what's interesting about karma. I could call the county, which I did relentlessly, no result. They come out and they mess the road up. I had a letter writing campaign. I raised money. We spent our own money on the road. But the road was kind of, because we hadn't done the internal work. The causes were still there for me to experience a rough road and hate it. Okay, when I went after the causes, my harsh speech, and the other people I lived with, their harsh speech, and they suddenly, boom. And so that's what we say is a miracle. It's not a miracle. If the cause is there, you will experience the result. No cause, you will not experience a result. Like that. So it's people I know that have purified cancer when Western medicine gave up on them due to practices they got from their guru, and with great faith did it, and things, there's many things that, and we go, it's a miracle. It's not. The cause was there, and if the cause is not there, it won't happen. Like that. So the 4 of speech are, we avoid lying.
Harsh.
What's the first one? The other one? Divisive speech, harsh speech, and gossip. Okay? And then we have 3 with our mind. We avoid covetousness, which is having a greedy mind. We avoid harmful intent, so wishing others, or also called ill will, wishing them badly with our minds. And we avoid holding wrong views. There's many types of wrong views. One of them is, for instance, I think in the 1930s and 40s, it was very fashionable to smoke cigarettes. People weren't really clear about the negative ramifications of smoking cigarettes, nicotine and tar and things like that cause cancer. So now, knowing that, if you said cigarette smoking is good for your health, that's holding a wrong view. The ultimate wrong view is not having a direct perception of the nature of reality, emptiness, not having a direct perception of emptiness. Ultimate wrong view. So it's really helpful and something you can try from this point on if you'd like, or till tomorrow night, but I would continue, is look at those 10 non-virtues. We avoid killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, divisive speech, harsh speech, gossip, covetousness, ill will, and holding wrong views. Some of them just popped out for you, I'm sure, where you go, that's mine, I do that. Right? So go to work on those first. Take 1 or 2 of them and exercise 1 or 2 a week. This is your exercise of like, okay, I am not going to say anything negative and anything critical this week about anybody. And even complaining, I find, is can be divisive. It can be gossipy. And what does it really get you? So slowly pick 1 or 2 and really work on it. For we can put a little note on your mirror in your bathroom or the dashboard of the car where it reminds you, oh, that's right. I don't want to get into that trash talk. Or I really, I kind of went to the gym last week and I forgot my conditioner and I just found there was somebody's bottle there and I used it. That's a light view of stealing, technically. Unless you ask the person, unless you know they gave up ownership of the conditioner, and I can ask them, can I borrow your conditioner? If I didn't do that, it's stealing. Now it's a light little thing of stealing, but it's still stealing. Right? So that's how we get in trouble. We're not going to steal a car, but there are things we steal. People's time, when you're going on and on and on for somebody over and over with your problems sometimes, and you're repeating and repeating, after the 3rd or 4th time, and different things that we steal. For me, it was the office supply cabinet at my office.
I remember that.
I mentioned that before. That was terrible. So things like that. So see if you can manage to work with those 10 virtues, 10 ethical guidelines. Okay. Okay, let's read our prayer, the foundation of all good qualities, and we're gonna read through 8 stanzas. We only have 1 more session, right? We're running out of time. Okay. We're going to read through number 8. So anyone who'd like to join in, let's feel free. And what will happen is as you read, this is a scanning meditation of the Lamrim, you'll recognize some of the things we talked about. The foundation of all good qualities is the kind and venerable Guru. Correct devotion to him is the root of the path. By clearly seeing this and applying great effort, please bless me to rely upon him with great respect. Understanding that the precious freedom of this rebirth is found only once, is greatly meaningful and is difficult to find again, please bless me to generate the mind that unceasingly, day and night, takes its essence. This life is as impermanent as a water bubble. Remember how quickly it decays and death comes. After death, just like a shadow follows the body, the results of black and white karma follow. Finding firm and definite conviction in this, please bless me always to be careful, to abandon even the slightest negativities, and accomplish all virtuous deeds. Seeking samsaric pleasures is the door to all suffering. They are uncertain and cannot be relied upon. Recognizing these shortcomings, please bless me to generate the strong wish for the bliss of liberation. Led by this pure thought, mindfulness, alertness, and great caution arise. The root of the teachings is keeping the pratimoksha vows. Please bless me to accomplish this essential practice. Just as I have fallen into the sea of samsara, so have all mother migratory beings. Please bless me to see this, train in supreme bodhichitta, and bear the responsibility of freeing migratory beings. Even if I develop only bodhicitta, but I don't practice the 3 types of morality, I will not achieve enlightenment. Oops. With my pure, clear recognition of this, please bless me to practice the bodhisattva vows with great energy. So we're just going to stop there for a moment, and I want to talk about some of these verses 5 to 8. This is moving in, if you go to C5, seeking samsaric pleasures is the door to all suffering. This is talking about moving into the scope for the middle scope being who's motivated by I'm practiced because I'm afraid of what will come next when I die, and that terrifies me. But building on that motivation, I realize that even in this life, the way it is now, I'm still suffering, and the suffering's not good enough. I would like to reach liberation or nirvana, which is a permanent cessation of all your mental afflictions. That's nirvana. Okay? So the middle scope talks about all the different kinds of suffering. And it's not pleasant. People go, oh, can we get to bodhicitta? You know. But you need to go through the suffering to transcend the suffering. So it was the first teaching the Buddha gave. The first noble truth, after the Buddha got enlightened, first noble truth is there is suffering. That was the first thing the Buddha taught. Suffering exists. So there's a reason that was the first thing he taught, is in order to have infinite compassion, in order to develop the fully open, fully, as Lama Yeshe would call it, totality heart, fully opened heart, right, is you need to understand how you suffer. If you really want to free others from suffering and get down in there with their suffering and feel that for them and really want to experience that big heart, you have to first understand how you yourself suffer. There's different kinds of suffering. Some of it is blatant, and we got that. We know that. You get a headache. Your kid has the flu. You have the flu. You break your leg. We understand that kind of suffering. That's called the suffering is suffering. Mm-hmm. And the way suffering is made up in these teachings is they call it the 3, the 6, and the 8. So they really have a lot of different ways they want to tell you about suffering. Okay? And so if we just look at the 3 sufferings right now, the first one, the suffering is suffering, I just mentioned. You know, you get cancer, you have a headache, your stomach ache. Okay, suffering is suffering. Or you're going through incredible emotional distress, is the suffering is suffering. Mm-hmm. Each one gets more subtle. The second one is called the suffering of change, more subtle. And this is a problem for us, the suffering of change. Because what happens is there's many things that we impute pleasure on. We think it causes us pleasure. We think it's pleasurable, but it's suffering. So examples are, and this is about the suffering of change. An example is, you're sitting outside in the sun on a beautiful day. It's beautiful out, and the sun is shining on your face. Feels really great. It's warming. It's wonderful. The sun is great, you think. You know, I love the sun. The sun is really great. And suddenly you cross a threshold and you're getting a little sweaty. It's hot. It's getting hotter. And now I'm not feeling so good. And so what I do is I get myself up and I move into the shade. And suddenly there's a moment and it feels really good. It's nice and it's cool, and I don't have the sun on my face, and it's really shady, and it's really nice, and it's really great, and I'm really having all this pleasure, and now I'm a little chilly. This is life. It's continual. It's exhausting. It's exhausting. But we are continually going after the external pleasure. There's going to be something there that I'm going to grab onto, that I'm going to eat, that I'm going to experience, that I will try, and I'm going to find pleasure forever. It doesn't exist that way. It's got to come inside, in the mind. If it's not in the mind, it's futile to find it outside of yourself. Suffering a change. So the only pleasure you experience, technically, if you check, is the moment of change. It's a temporary, fleeting thing, and it's not real pleasure. The reason it's not real pleasure, this is how you know if something is authentic, deep pleasure, meaning it will be sustained, is the more you have of it, the more pleasure you feel. So I know there's some chocoholics in the room, I'm sure. And my mother was one, as was my grandmother. And their thing was chocolate is the ultimate pleasure. And I would see their entire being, how when I'd give them a gift box of chocolates, and I'd see my mother shaking, like, here it comes, oh my God. And when we'd open that lid, and there they were, like I could see, but the thing is, if chocolate is an ultimate pleasure the more you eat it, the more pleasure you'll have. You eat too many chocolates, you get sick. I sit in the sun too long, I'm hot. I go to the shade, I'm cold. Everything's like that, suffering a change. So the nice thing is to just be realistic. Change is a constant, it's the only thing you can count on. To just face things like that. I've seen people, do you ever see people on holidays? Like, I had a friend, went to Cape Cod, holiday for a week. When I was in Vermont, she went with a group of girlfriends, she was so excited. Fantastic, had a great time. Until she got to the 5th and 6th day of the holiday. 7 days, 5th and 6th day, she was so consumed that it was ending. And so miserable to go back to her miserable job and this thing, and she morning, this, and she ruined the last 2 days of the holiday for herself. Later she thought about it, she goes, I couldn't even enjoy the last 2 days because I was so consumed that it was over. Many people do that. Many people totally, I've seen somebody got a new car. They bought a brand new car. It had to be, they knew exactly what they wanted. They traveled many states away to get this car. They needed it to have this. They wanted the stripe on the side. I want this. I got to get the sound system. I'm going to get the special tires. And I'm going to get those at the other place. The amount of time they spent to order the car and get the car into the condition they wanted. And then they drove over a curb and they ruined the tire. And then it was a fortune to get the tire fixed. And all the time that spent getting it fixed, and the continual tweaking of the sound system. And then I'm just going to get that speaker, and we're going to get that, and then I'm going to get that special thing that makes it sound like that. And then and it's this obsession. And they're never really, are they really happy with the car? Have they ever just experienced the car for what it is? That the car is going to get dinged at some point. I even heard them say once, I want to have this car for the rest of my life. I think Lama Yeshe might call it small thinking. Small thinking. When are we small thinking? Better to big think, because you can benefit more beings. And Lama Zopa Rinpoche is all about stretching you so that you become a big thinker. That's part of the spiritual path. Can I have a little bit more bigger vision of my purpose, everybody around me, what's going on, how I am in the world with everybody else, like that. So it's kind of cool. So I thought of this person, and they've had a lot of suffering in their life because everything about them is like the car. Like everything they're gleaning, everything outside of themselves is going to bring them happiness. It never does. So all they do is that thing wears out, and that's not really doing it, so now I need to buy another thing. And then I get tired of that, now I'm going to buy another thing. Then I'm going to do this, then it's going to be the next thing. And it's exhausting. I'm exhausted watching their life sometimes. I'm just like, what's it going to be the next time, right? So it's like that. It's hard. Most subtle now, this is the third suffering of the three that I'm talking about, not the 6 and the 8, the 3. No, I've got one. I'm good. Thank you so much. I'm good. And then I'll take some questions. And this is the way Lama Zopa Rinpoche says it. It sounds really heavy. I'm going to get all-pervasive compounding suffering. All-pervasive compounding suffering. Well, that sounds really dreadful, right? So this is the suffering from taking rebirth with what's called contaminated aggregates, taking rebirth like that because you have not had a direct perception of emptiness. So everything is in the nature of suffering. And we perpetuate, and compounding, we're adding more to it because I have a tainted, mistaken view every moment I breathe. And that's all ordinary beings. I'm not laying a trip on myself. I'm just being honest with myself. I'm working on it, by trying to understand emptiness, study about emptiness, meditate on emptiness. But I have to be honest with myself that many times I have mistaken views about stuff. I'm not seeing things clearly because I don't have that realization. So it's called all-pervasive compounding suffering. And it causes you to take rebirth with contaminated aggregates. What is aggregate? It simply means collection. Collection. And it's basically your body and mind. The mind is made up of 4 aggregates and the body is 1. The body is the form aggregate and the mind is 4 mental aggregates of different aspects of the mind. So all-pervasive compounding suffering. If you want to look at some of the other sufferings, which we're well aware of, most of them, is if you look at the 8 sufferings, 4 of them deal with other realms. Again, just like Precious Human Rebirth. So 4 of them deal with the suffering of, I'm sorry, not the other realms necessarily, but it deals with the cycle of samsara. Samsara means to turn. We're turning through the suffering. All of samsara is a broken situation. So you're turning through birth, old age, sickness, and death. And all of that has aspects of suffering, as we know, like that. There's other sufferings of the 6 and the 8, such as the suffering of uncertainty. So I talked to somebody, and I kept meaning to tell her this, somebody in this room I spoke to the other day, and I kept meaning to mention this to her later. So at one point she said to me, but I just need to know how it's all sorted. I just need to know that everything's going to be certain and I've got the answers and this is how it's going to be. Okay, you got to give that one up. Okay, it's just, life is not like that. But most of us are very uncomfortable with not knowing. Not knowing. I remember getting ordained midway through my time as the director at Vajrapani at this center. And people were just like, are you going to stay here? Are you going to stay as director? Are you going to stay on? Because usually if you have a change of life like that as a nun, you may go to a nunnery. But the nunneries at that time was only Chenrezig Institute in Australia. And somehow things were working well at the center, and Rinpoche was happy to just leave me there. Like it was working and it was good and benefit. But all these people needed to know what I was going to do. They wanted to know right away because I was the director and it affected a lot of people. So, and sometimes you don't know. There's something, and you're going to move, but you don't know when. You will get another job, but you're not sure when. You're not sure when you'll give notice. You're not sure where your kid's going to go to the next school and what that's going to look like, but you want to know now that it's all sorted. So this is that uncertainty. You're just not going to know. Don't know yet, and you're going to have to hang out with the not knowing. The more comfortable you get with the not knowing, it's a great ride, actually. I'm really enjoying it right now. I left Milarepa Center, did a lot of retreat, and then landed at my dad's, elderly dad, to help him. And this is my childhood home. I didn't expect to stay there very long. And it was in the beginning it was very uncertain for me. Because I went, should I live here? Should I live someplace? Go to another center? And I went through like a year or two of like, I don't know what I need to know. So it was a little bit resistance and a little unsettled time. And then I asked Rinpoche, right? But I was feeling better and better. Somehow the situation kind of sorted some things, and I looked around and kind of thought there's many advantages right now to being in this house. It's a simple house, it's great, but I can, and then Rinpoche's like, right now, just stay there, it works out. And so I'm all in sync again. It's a nice feeling, but sometimes you're not. And can I just stay with the not knowing? So uncertainty. There's another suffering, dissatisfaction. So sad, dissatisfaction. This is the person I know about the car, and then that's not happy, and then you get this, and this isn't, and then you want this, and then, and I've seen people, and you marry the perfect person that you had, and you get this perfect house that you have, and then you have your kid, and there's this drinking salt water, they say. You're just always thirsty. Always need more, always need more, always need more. Not satisfied. And we do know some people that are never satisfied. So never being satisfied can create a cause for you to take rebirth in a preta realm, hungry ghost realm. because they never have enough food. They're thirsty and hungry all the time because they existed with intense grasping, constant grasping. Could be things, and it could be a way they wanted to be in the world, like that. I've seen that with people. It's very sad. There's suffering and loneliness, right? We know what that's like. Very sad. There's a suffering of the instability of life. Sometimes you're riding on the top of the wave. Everything's great. You're going to be at the bottom at some point. You can't stay there. You're going to end up... There's also sufferings like meeting with what you don't like and separating with what you love. Constant. It's just part of samsara, that things that come together fall apart again. Things that meant to come together disperse. Every meeting, there's a parting. And sometimes it's kind of interesting with Buddhists when your Buddhist networks, your friends, and there are some friends I'll meet after a long time, very close friend, Buddhist friend, and we'll meet and we'll be really excited and we see each other and we're just like, and then on Sunday we're going to part. Like we just know, like right then it's like, remember, there's the parting, Or we'll come to the parting and be like, okay, now it's, who knows when we'll meet again. And sometimes I'll think and I'll say sometimes about, I'm looking forward to the next time we meet. It's going to be another great meeting, So it's just acknowledging that sometimes can make the world go around more pleasantly, and you can kind of play with it like that. So those are some of the sufferings. I'm going to stop there. I'm going to leave you with the sufferings. Think about those. Have a little review till tomorrow. We have our last class tomorrow. We have a fair amount to go through tomorrow. So I may not get to all the meditations, but we can see. Really leave all the heavy stuff for them. We might do a meditation on the Buddha, or we'll see if there's any requests or something. But I'd like to take any questions. Anything confusing, anything like that.
I guess I still wonder about like when you're meditating, and I've heard this quite often, and I've had a meditation practice for myself for a couple of years now. There's various ways of meditating, and I guess I always hear the one where it's saying, take a thought and meditate on it. But I guess I don't know. I never really can understand how I do that without my mind just starts thinking about all kinds of other things. So I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Is it really then you're focusing on just one subject that you're meditating on versus, like I've always just gone into my brain and just look for shapes and colors and things like that and just focus on that and breath.
Right.
Instead of actual thoughts to
Yes.
think about. And I'm like, I'm only just getting used to the going in and getting a clear, like, nothingness going on.
So we have two main types of meditation we do in our tradition, but there's other traditions that do other things, and it's helpful to explore sometimes. So the main ones we do are something called placement meditation, stabilizing meditation, same. In Tibetan it's called shine, calm abiding. And that's the standard meditation most people think of as meditation. You're placing your mind on an object and you're keeping it there, unwaveringly. A lot of people start with the breath. Tibetan Buddhism doesn't usually really hang out with the breath that long, but it's a great settling thing with the breath, and if you get very distracted, you can always go back to the breath. What we tend to do is eventually take a visual object to start with, often an image of the Buddha, and the reason is it's uplifting for the mind. It leaves a virtuous imprint on the mind, but you'd start with a simple Buddha image, a card you could look at, but when you do the meditation, it's a mental image, so you close your eyes and you're bringing it up in your mind, concentrating from the mind side on the image. So you're learning how your mind works in holding the image clearly and holding it unwaveringly. And so you're working from the mind side to develop concentration. There's 9 levels of shine to actually attain calm abiding, where you hold your mind unwaveringly on an image with all of the details clear, and you hold that for 4 hours. Then you have shine. When you have shine, you are clairvoyant. You have an incredibly pliant, flexible, blissful mind. But the only reason we're really focused on developing that level of concentration is so that you can apply that concentration when you meditate on emptiness, the nature of reality, and penetrate to have a direct perception of emptiness that you need to get enlightened. There is shine in other traditions, some of them not Buddhist. There's Hindu traditions where you can get shine and have clairvoyance, but that the point is not for that. The point is, in our tradition, is to benefit all beings. And the only way you can do it is to become a Buddha. The only way you can become a Buddha, according to our tradition, is to develop the fully opened heart, bodhichitta, and have a direct perception of emptiness, and have your mind thoroughly soaked and familiarized in that view. That's why we want concentration. That's one kind of meditation. You can also do analytical meditation on the Lam Rim, the way I was describing. And then the way you combine the meditations is, if I'm meditating on precious human rebirth, and I'm thinking about being a female dog in an undeveloped country and all that they suffer, and getting impregnated again and again, and having babies and trying to feed the babies and starving, on, and I am like, I can't come back. I'm a human. I have this great birth. I can do anything with my life. I can meditate. I can become a Buddha. And you really have it intensely here. Then you take your concentration and concentrate on that experience to deepen the realization. That's how we combine shine with analytical meditation. So other traditions like the Vipassana movement that came from Burma, that went into the Thai forest tradition with some great masters like Ajahn Chah, and it's Theravadan Buddhism or Hinayana Buddhism, where you're focused on getting free of your suffering. They very much work with the breath and sensation of the body, and do some alternate periods of walking meditation, sitting meditation, that has now come in very popular in the States with Insight Meditation Society in Barre, Massachusetts, Joseph Goldstein, Sharon Salzberg, and on the West Coast is Insight Spirit Rock Meditation Center, Jack Cornfield. So they're very famous Vipassana centers, very nice centers. They invite other teachers as well. They're great places. Some people like that, where they do 9 to 10 day retreats. Goenka was in that style as well, and you have no distractions. You do not read during the retreats, you do not journal, you do not talk, you're in strict silence, and you just alternate periods, most of the day, 45-minute periods of walking, 40-minute periods walking, sitting, noting sensation, noting, and you may have one interview with the teacher. And that's one type of meditation. Zen meditation, very, very different as well. Almost emptying the mind, or you're focusing on a certain riddle or koan to come to a deeper realization, insight of something. Very, very different type of meditation. And they have very austere practices and different practices like that. So when you're doing meditation, if you're newer, it's helpful to get, like there's a book, How to Meditate. Kathleen McDonald, I find it very, very helpful. One of our beginning meditation books, and you can get it online, you can download as an ebook. And there's other meditation books, but find one that is a valuable one. She takes you through all kinds of variety, and starting with posture and motivation, and it's very, very helpful. And so you could just start with parts of that. The Discovering Buddhism modules all have meditation components that are downloadable. Sheet, and you just put the sheet in front of you and follow along. Just, you get to a point, pause, reflect more deeply, go to the next line, perfectly fine like that, slowly. So better than just arbitrarily kind of sitting. And there's one thing about just sitting and quieting yourself, basic mindfulness practice where you're noticing you're agitated, and I focus on the breath and I just notice I'm agitated. But Tibetan Buddhism would say that's not going to get you enlightened, but it's certainly a de-stressor to start a deeper practice like that. Yeah. You're welcome. So let's stop there for tonight, and I want to thank you so much for coming. And let's read some dedication prayers to take whatever wonderful energy we have created from our time together. May it be beneficial for all of us, and let's invest it in our swift enlightenment so we can really benefit all beings. Dedication prayers. Due to this virtue, may I quickly become a Guru Buddha, lead all transmigratory beings without exception to that state. May the precious supreme bodhichitta, not yet born, arise. May that arisen not decline, but increase more and more. For His Holiness the Dalai Lama, in the land encircled by snow mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. All-powerful Chenrezig Tenzin Gyatso, please remain until samsara ends. And if we go down the page for Lama Zopa Rinpoche, in the middle of the page, the next page. You who uphold the subduer's moral way, who serves the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjunath's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplishes magnificent prayers honoring the three sublime ones, Savior of myself and others, your disciples, please, please live long. And for Osalhita, Venerable One, to you whose kindness exceeds that of all the conquerors, for those wanderers in far-off places, especially the West, mindful of your loving concern for us, in intentionally descending again into a family of a far distant land, we make this request. Lama, please, please live long. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we have our last class tomorrow at 7:30.